As part of efforts to diversify the economy, the federal government launched the Yam Export Program. The program recently faced some challenges after yams were reported rotten upon arrival at their destination. On this week's edition of the program, we talk to one of those behind the export program. Hello there. Thank you for joining us on the program this week. I'm Gloria Umezuke. The Yam Export Program came with some expectations, but the report of bad yams in the exported package raised concerns. What should we do to make this right? We will talk more about that in our interview. But first, what are the stories that made headlines during the week in the nation's capital? President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve an external loan of $5.5 billion to finance the 2017 budget. President Buhari's request was contained in a letter read on the floor of the upper chamber by the Senate President, Senator Bukola Saraki.
The Senate is requested to kindly approve the following external borrowings. 1. Issuance of $2.5 billion in the ICM through Eurobonds or a combination of Eurobonds and diaspora bonds for the financing of the FGN 2017 Appropriation Act and capital expenditure projects in the Act. 2. Issuance of Eurobond in the ICM and or loan syndication by the banks in the sum of $3 billion for refinancing of maturing domestic debt obligations of the FGN.
The wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, has called for a probe into how the budget for the State House Medical Center is being utilized. The call comes barely 1 week after the management of the hospital said it would seek the commercialization of the center to boost its revenue. The other side of the story.
A few weeks ago, I was sick as well. They advised me to take the first flight to London and to school. I said I must be treated in Nigeria. Because there's a budget for an assigned clinic to take care of us. But if it's going to be the budget was maybe 100 million, we need to know the way the budget is spent. And along the line, I insisted the whole ASO lady find out if the X-ray machine is working. They say it's not working. They didn't know that I was the one that's supposed to be in that hospital at the very time. I had to go to foreign hospital, foreigners. I had to go to the hospital that was established by foreigners in and out 100%. What does that mean? So we need to change our mindset and live here. And I'm sure Dr. Mamini would like me to say this, but I have to say that.
The federal government says the implementation of its economic recovery and growth plan is entering a new phase. The Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma, said this at the 23rd Nigerian Economic Summit in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory.
You've expressed concerns about whether it will be properly implemented, given Nigeria's past record with previous plans. And I appreciate these concerns. But I can assure you that this government is committed to the faithful implementation of the plan. And it is gratifying to see that some of these initiatives have contributed to the second quarter performance numbers recently released by the National Bureau of Statistics, which indicates that after 5 quarters of contraction, we have now recorded a small growth of 0.55%. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, whilst this growth is still too small for celebration, It is indeed a signal that we're on the right path. It's also a signal that the economic slide, which started in 2014, has finally stopped, and that we're moving back onto the path of growth.
Following a plethora of industrial actions, the federal government is set to implement the no work, no pay rule. This is one of the several decisions reached at the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting.
The no work, no pay is not a rule, neither is it a policy. It is a law captured in the Trade Dispute Act of the Federation, Section 43 to be precise. It says that workers they have a right to disengage or remove their services from an employer if there's a breakdown in their discussions or negotiations. But for the period that the worker does so, the employer should not pay. And those periods are to be counted as non-pensionable times in a period of work. On the issue of tenure, we are not limiting any group to 2 years, 3 years. But what we are insisting that it will not be open-ended. You have to give us in your constitution a term limit for elected officers. If the association agrees that they want to do one single term, fine. 4 terms, fine. But it must be written down. It must be there in the constitution.